This is somewhat related to the previous topic. Well, not somewhat, quite closely actually. And again, something that I consider quite difficult to nail, yet very important for me if I am to actually enjoy pretty much any action scene that would contain this particular kind of interaction. And what I am talking about is that I need to be always aware of what it means to fight in a group. For example, if a character is a part of some group and uses a ranged weapon that also uses some sort of ammunition, if that ammunition is retrievable, then the group should, at least if possible, fight around that fact, since there is nothing like infinite quivers unless magic, and that actually feels like the type of magic that I don't want in my stories. It's the quality of life magic, but not for the characters, but for my own, the writer's sake. So instead, the close combat melee fighters are trying to hid away from the ammunition arrows. Again, just an example, but they are a good one to further elaborate, help with the description of this particular point. So the melee are trying to preserve the ammunition and also cooperate, position themselves and the enemy so that the ranged can get clean line of sight shots in, preferably in a way that will result in as little loss of ammunition as possible to conserve that for the next fight. There are no infinite game-like inventories, so both weight and stockpile are important. This encompasses everything: food, water, and other supplies that the group needs to split in between themselves, carry, and take care of when they are not in some sort of a safe haven. But for now, I'm more focused on the group fighting aspect, tactics, and everyone working together around each other, being mindful of the details, like, as I've mentioned before, not hitting the enemy where the ammunition is sticking out, unless obviously it is a fight that is literally for their lives, where every single shred of hesitation can lead to a fatality. Obviously, that still needs to follow some kind of logic, life, and no major injuries, morale are all more important than one arrow. But on the other hand, it adds up, and if the ranged are in a situation where they run out of ammunition because these tactics were not adhered to, that can also lead to some failure and consequences. And despite me wanting to mostly focus on the protagonist, my love for dialogue prevents me from, well, keeping him alone. So there will be other characters, and I do find the aspect of cooperating or clashing against a group of other characters quite intriguing, and that's definitely something that I want somehow incorporated in my stories. I will get back to the one against many aspect, despite being almost positive that one or two of my previous videos touched upon that, but I do believe that I have more to say. But for now, I'm going to move on and visit the rapid arrows living their blue life. Well, to be specific, that was just one chapter, and we are already on our way to the next adventure. And that is a grand gathering of clubs from the area of Sandstone Mountains. Everyone is invited, and the Rapid Arrows are planning on joining as well. 3 days of activities, and when it's time to board the train, Speedy is just ever so slightly late. His delay caused by him forgetting 12 rissoles on the piano in the sixth room, but despite that, everything goes well, and when they arrive, they all begin building their tents as the other clubs start gathering. They notice some other, slightly older boys in quite interesting shirts, more of a uniform, and they seem to be just observing the activity. When approached by Speedy and Redcap, they seem rather dismissive. They correct Speedy's identification of the bird's motif on their shirts, calling it a condor. They also deny their involvement in the gathering whatsoever, or them being a readers' club, and then also proclaim that they would be much happier if everyone who had arrived would just go back. But for now, nothing else happens. The gathering formally begins, and the organizers introduce the activities for the rest of this first day, and that there will be a great bonfire to finish the day off. When that starts, Mirek sends Speedy to grab his guitar, who scatterbrainedly asks if Mirek is going to burn it as well. But when he arrives at the area where the tents were, the past tense is more than appropriate in this case because someone apparently stormed the area, took down the tents, and scattered their contents all over the ground. So Speedy rushes back and everyone begins gathering their things when one of the girls finds out that her camera is missing. And by the way, back then, I don't need to stress how rare and thus important cameras were for your normal average human. And then someone else finds a note that says that this is the way the condor punishes intruders, the condor of the mountain's nest. So in the morning, the Rapidaros approach the organizers and share with them their experience of the meeting with the condors and their willingness with approaching the party. The importance of the camera is stressed because failing to recapture that would result in the girl being rather unlucky when she returns home. And so the Rapid Arrows have a slightly different adventure than what was planned initially on their hands. Their hints being on the note where the condor is supposedly nesting somewhere in the mountains, and Indra notices some smoke. So following that, trying to approach that will be their next step. Climbing and crawling through some quite difficult terrain, Speedy begins envisioning some rather dark scenarios of some defenders dropping heavy boulders on top of their heads with them having absolutely no room to maneuver. Indra dismisses him, and then there is a cliff above a stream lined with this really thin ground where walking is possible. This ledge with barely enough room for feet. Mirek is worried that someone might slip up, while Redcap is worried if they are still closing onto the area where the smoke is coming from. Speedy does slip up, and according to him, there is only a hair's breadth separating him from his demise as he is holding onto a branch when Yundra eyes said hair. He comments that he would love to have hair like that since it turns out to be this thick, sturdy, hard branch, with Speedy mumbling to himself after being called a coward and told to put his pants back on that the club just almost lost one-fifth of its members, but it's all fun and games for little Mr. Yindra. Anyway, when they manage to overcome this obstacle, they reach this cozy cove with two condors cooking some soup for themselves. When they do confront them, the condors are exasperated by the fact that the boys are bothering them even here all the way up in the mountains. Yarka is just demanding the camera back, and the other condor just invites them for a beating if they can swim. So the rapid arrows begin their approach through the shallow waters, really not scared of only two black shirts. Speedy advancing last does not forget to quip in, telling the rest that of course there is no need to be scared since he is there, he has their backs, only for an entire garden worth of sod to land on his face. Courtesy of the great customer service the Condors are more than willing to provide to all of their guests. So the rapid arrows return fire, costing the Condors the delicious soup that they have been cooking there up until that point. A regrettable casualty of war, but inevitable. And when it's clear that the battle will be lost, one of them retreats while the other one falls prey to the rapid arrows and becomes their hostage. While being interrogated, he admits to the tearing down the tents, but claims to have no idea what could have happened to the camera, and as a reason, he just tells them that the condors are slightly uncomfortable with the presence of these clubs in their mountains, but refuses to elaborate with any specifics. So Mirek and Yarka leaves the other three behind to guard the hostage, and they are going to investigate further into the mountains, which is where I'm going to stop, and I'm going to talk a bit more about various stuff in the next video.